researching family history is one of the most popular hobbies in this country, right up there with gardening. A nation of immigrants, we almost all come from somewhere else we wish we knew more about. So searching for our roots holds tremendous appeal. And today, there's an exciting new addition to the genealogist's toolkit, genetic genealogy. It turns out that inside each one of us, within every cell of our bodies, is information about who our ancestors were, where they lived, and who we're related to today. Our DNA contains hidden stories about our past, and scientists, together with businessmen, are now offering ways to help us read them.
Hello, everybody. I love that you're here. Thank you for coming. All right, let's go.
Vi Higginson is the founder and director of the Mama Foundation for the Arts in Harlem. She believes it's crucial for African Americans to know and celebrate their heritage. But for most of her life, she knew virtually nothing about her own.
It happened when my grandmother died. When I saw her laying in the casket, and when I realized I didn't know who she was.
It's too late nowadays.
It's too late.
She started researching her family tree, but could only get as far back as her grandmother's father, Robert West. Then she heard about a company that could explore her great-grandfather's ancestry using DNA from a direct male descendant. So she called her cousin, James West, and asked if she could come swab his cheek.
So we go down to Washington, D.C., we take the test, and he was all excited, and we send it back, and bam, there's a hit.
A match between cousin James' DNA and that of several other men whose last name was also West. That means that James, and therefore Vi, are related to all these men who sent their DNA to the same company, also looking for matches. Vi was reeling from that information when she received a phone call from halfway across the country.
And he said, "Hello, my name is Marion West, and I'm a cattle rancher from Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And I understand we're cousins."
You just picked up the phone out of the blue?
Phone and dialed it.
Just like that.
Just like
You have come out of the blue for her.
Right. It shocked her.
You probably never had a cousin that sounded like that before.
No, not even close. I mean, I didn't see a cow till I was 22. So,
And she wasn't exactly what he'd been expecting either. He had tried DNA testing to prove a family story, that his bloodline traced back to British royalty. You had the sense that your family was pure English, pure blood.
Oh, yeah.
Blue
We just
blood.
100%.
That's what you thought.
100% blue blood. That's right.
And then came Vi. Did you know anything
Well,
about that at all?
I'd heard that she might be part African American. And I was trying to find that, so I wanted a picture of her.
Did you tell him you lived in Harlem?
I told him that I lived in New York. I don't recall saying Harlem.
I sent her my picture.
Because you really wanted her.
I wanted hers. These two blood from that.
I sent him a picture and a copy of a book I wrote called This Is My Song. And he wrote me back and said, "I love this book and I have some more copies. I want to give it to my friends."
Marion West and Vi's cousin James West are related through the tiny Y chromosome, which men pass down unchanged to their sons. So it traces an unbroken line from generation to generation. It was the Y chromosome that allowed family members of Sally Hemings to prove they descended from Thomas Jefferson, or at least from one of his male relatives. Now, if you want to find out about your ancestry, there are at least a dozen different companies offering to analyze DNA for prices ranging from $100 to $400 a test. There are tests for Native American ancestry, for African ancestry, even for relatedness to Genghis Khan. The company Marion and Vi chose, Family Tree DNA, is one of the largest. They say the DNA proves that Marion and Vi share a common male ancestor, probably within the last 100 to 300 years, and that common ancestor was Caucasian. Had it up to that point ever occurred to you that you had a branch of the family that was African American? Had it ever entered your mind? Never. How did you feel about the prospect of having black relatives?
Well, I really tell you the truth. It's just like I didn't doubt it a little bit.
In fact, he embraced it and extended an invitation.
It said, "We'd like to invite you down for Thanksgiving dinner."
To Missouri.
To Missouri.
Poplar Bluff.
Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And I thought it was really very charming and very nice, but I wasn't going to Missouri.
Not on Thanksgiving, but she did go to Missouri. Marion drove 2.5 hours to the airport to meet her and her daughter, a scene they videotaped.
And he grabs us, throws his arms around us. Oh my God! And he said, "This is a day I have prayed for. I'm so glad you came. Thank you."
I Reverend Hudson, I said, "You're part of blood. You're mine. You're good. God put us together." That's what I told.
God put us together. When you started this, in your wildest imaginations, did you ever think you could end up in a white family?
No.
Is it funny? Is it bemusing? Is it weird?
All of it.
All of it. I just said.
All of the above. But there's some joy in the discovery. Who am I? Why do I look the way I do? It's like discovering American history through yourself.
The American history I discovered is a common one, it turns out. Geneticist Rick Kittles runs a company called African Ancestry that specializes in DNA testing for black Americans. He says a full 1/3 of the men he tests find out they have a white male relative somewhere back in time. How do people who find this out react?
Some black men get upset and say, "Look, I'm black. Look at me, I'm black." And and I say, "Yeah, you are, but this small segment of your DNA doesn't go back to Africa, but to Europe. We are a mosaic of many different ancestors. We can go back several generations, and there are hundreds of people thousands of people who actually contributed to our DNA."
And that's the rub. This business of genetic genealogy is fraught with limitations. For one thing, it can only provide information about a tiny fraction of our ancestry. Because we get half our DNA from our mothers and half from our fathers, almost all of our DNA gets shuffled and remixed every generation, making it impossible to trace what comes from whom. There are just 2 bits of DNA that remain pure. The Y chromosome, which passes directly from father to son, and something called mitochondrial DNA, which passes unchanged from mother to child. Hank Greeley, a law professor at Stanford University, has studied this new field. He worries that people don't realize just how many ancestors they actually have.
8 generations ago, both you and I had 256 great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents.
Wait, you're saying that if you go back 8 generations, we have 256 great-great-great-grandparents?
Yes, it doubles every generation. So you've got 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, and it adds up fast. It adds up so fast, in fact, that if you go back 20 generations, you've got over 1 million grandparents.
1,048,576 to be exact. And in each generation, DNA testing can provide information about only 2 of them.
So you could be Peruvian on your mother's side, Japanese on your father's side, Swedish on everything else.
And
you'll never know the Swedish from the Y chromosome or the mitochondrial DNA.
Now, you've looked at several of these companies that are doing these tests.
Yes.
Do you think that they explain what you just explained to us?
No. I don't think any of them does as good of a job of pointing out the limitations. But, businesses often don't go around telling you how weak their product is.
We don't oversell. I mean, we just say, look, we provide a service. If you're interested in exploring a tiny bit of your DNA and trace its ancestry, we can do that.
When you say it's a tiny little amount,
It's less than 0.1%.
that's pretty teeny.
Yeah, but for people who know nothing about any of them, I think it's very important. We do know a lot about the transatlantic slave trade.
Kittle's company has amassed the largest database of DNA sequences from countries in Africa, particularly those from which slaves were taken. His goal is to help American blacks trace their ancestry back to Africa, a history totally lost to them.
You think about young African Americans growing up thinking that their history started with slavery. I mean, how do you think that impacts their psyche? We went through slavery. We didn't start with slavery.
To Vi Higginson, the prospect of tracing even a tiny fraction of her ancestry back to Africa was enthralling. 60 Minutes sent her DNA to African ancestry, as well as to several other genetic genealogy companies, to see what they could tell us about Vi's maternal lineage.
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat.
Kittle's company sent Vi what they call a certificate of ancestry.
Oh, my God.
It says that you share maternal genetic ancestry with people from the Mendi tribe in Sierra Leone. Do you know anything about Sierra Leone or the Mendi people?
No.
Nothing.
People have been waiting a lifetime for something like this. Now, this is just a tiny bit of information now.
But they take it as huge.
Right, because it's cracking open the door that was closed for centuries.
There's a place in Africa you could say that I'm from. A tribe. I am thrilled. It puts a name, a place, a location, a people. It opens up such possibilities.
But the problem is, Sierra Leone wasn't the only answer Vi got. A company called Relative Genetics found a match to a single person in the Wobi tribe in the Ivory Coast.
Different? Now, I got all excited about that, and this is different? Now, how could that happen?
Then a third company, Trace Genetics. Your particular sequence matches sequences reported among multiple Mendenka individuals in Senegal.
What's up with this?
And Family Tree DNA, the company that linked Vi with Marion in the first place, came up with a whole